Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 750 subscriber milestone video. With this milestone hit, I'll be covering the next topic in the subscriber special. Considering that the last upload covered an alternate timeline series surrounding this event, this time we will be covering the event itself as it happened. However, before I start with today's topic, I do have a couple of announcements to make. The first announcement is the introduction of a second channel. This channel will be dedicated towards general gameplay and a little bit of personal, such as vlogs, adventures, etc. This will explore my more personal side as I want to focus this channel on producing lore content and storytelling style videos. The second announcement I have is regarding my streams. While I've attempted to start streaming on Twitch, I have found it difficult with the summer season and simply me wanting to focus on YouTube videos more. But this time, I will make more of an effort to maintain the Sunday schedule that I've initially committed to, and edited VODs of the gameplay will go towards the second channel. Feel free to leave comments here on what you would want to see outside of the lore videos for the second channel, and consider subscribing there as well, as I will be uploading more frequently. Now, on to today's milestone video topic. Throughout the entries that fall into the Spira series, that being 10, 10-2, and the following audio and novel, whether you consider them canon or not, references have been made of a war that occurred in Spira's history that defined much of what it became by the events of 10. This war is considered legendary and results in many of the features of Spira, or lack thereof. In fact, the main powers in Final Fantasy X Spira, both good and evil, have had some correlation or conjunction with this war, which is why it's important to know about this war and its result to get a better understanding of the Spira by the events of Final Fantasy X. It is interesting to note that as you play, read, and listen to the entries of 10 in chronological order, more details about the war is released. While my previous upload to the channel talked about an alternate timeline series entry that revolved around this war, in today's video, I will be talking about the war itself in canon, including details found in the current day Spira in the 10 series, and creating a timeline that hopefully makes sense to all of you as we cover today's topic of the Machina War. While we are quite used to the very natural, vibrant, and mostly peaceful world of modern Spira, minus a large flying whale-like monstrosity capable of destroying the entire world in its power, it is hard to imagine that the Spira of old was once full of metropolitan structures run by Machina. The use of Machina was a means to an alternative for people who do not possess the power of magic. What people with magic could do could be done by those not attuned with the power through the use of Machina. This trend was popularized by a particular subrace of humans, known as the Bedor, the ancestors of the Al Bhed. They are known to have no ability to use magic, but were a mechanically oriented people. According to the Ultimania Omega translations about Spira's ancient times, the use of Machina and magic in Spira has been in existence for at least 3,000 years. Spira was a much more technologically advanced world around this time, and it is likely that Spira was a different world in terms of layout. We can see the evidence of this in the ruins that we find throughout the player's journey in Final Fantasy X Spira. While not much is mentioned about what the ruins used to be, it is clear that the surrounding area of said ruins was in a much more advanced state in terms of a city layout and its purpose in ancient Spira. With essentially all of Spira being run by Machina, there are two cities that were the main cities of the world, Bevel and Zanarkand. While the two were the biggest Machina cities at the time, Zanarkand mostly relied on the art of summoning for combat, while Bevel relied on weaponizing the inventions of the Bedor to create Machina weapons. However, this was quite ironic as the status of the society of Bevel at the time was that people who had the power of magic were considered more superior than those who did not. But, instead of suppressing the use of Machina in the Bedor, the authority of Bevel had decided to take advantage of their abilities and use their technological skills to create Machina weapons to establish military dominance, one they would eventually use against the rival Machina city. However, this ambition of weaponizing the Machina meant that the authorities of Bevel forced the Bedor to develop such weapons, and thus worked in factories. Any sign of resistance would result in severe punishment, perhaps even death. So while the Bedor were critical in the contributions of ancient Spira, especially through the use of Machina, as a race, they were heavily repressed by the government and the general population. In their ambition of creating weapons through the use of Machina and their ongoing technological developments, they created a monstrous weapon known as Vegnagun. However, Bevel never used this weapon due to its inability to distinguish friend from foe, so it was hidden in the depths of Bevel, never to be used. As their military prowess grew, Bevel grew paranoid of Zanarkand and feared a war against them, so they struck first, attacking them as to preventing the rival Machina city from making a counterattack. While details of the war were not specifically detailed in terms of what happened in the war itself, what we do know is that Bevel had the upper hand in the battle due to their advanced Machina weaponry. It is likely that the movements of the Bevel forces may have likely involved them marching through the Comlands and Mount Gagazet to meet Zanarkand's forces in battle. It is unknown if battle ever spilled into the cities themselves, but it is unlikely as Bevel was too powerful for Zanarkand to push into the city itself, and Zanarkand was never invaded as Yevon performed its last resort plan before Vivel's forces managed to step foot into the city itself. Strangely enough, to Zanarkand, especially Yevon's eyes, they believed that the biggest threat from Vivel wasn't their Machina weapons, but their summoners. According to Final Fantasy X 2.5, in order to counter this, they sent assassins to Besaid at the gathering hub of the summoners and eliminate them by using bombs disguised as blitzballs. At some point during the battle, Shuyin, having learned of his beloved Len being deployed by Yevon as a part of an army of summoners to fight Bevel, eventually invaded it to activate its weapon hidden deep underground. A Zanarkand spy, who caught sight of Shuyin's movements, warned Len of his plan, and she makes her way to Bevel to stop him. In the process of her stopping him, they are stopped by Bevel guards and are eventually shot and killed. After some time, Bevel began to overwhelm Zanarkand due to their advancement in weaponry and the morale of the forces, and their troops began to march in the city. In a last resort attempt to save his city, Yevon had the inhabitants of Zanarkand turn into faith and dream a version of Zanarkand that would be inaccessible by the population of Spira. To achieve this, Yevon had the faith stationed atop Mount Gagazet and summoned this dream version of Zanarkand out at sea. As an added measure, he then created a suit of armor to protect both himself and the Zanarkand he summoned, a monstrous creature that eventually came to be known as Sin. Sin had two purposes upon its creation: to protect Dream Zanarkand and serve as the armor for Yevon as he continued the summoning of the city itself. In addition, he gave Yunalesca, his daughter and one of the only survivors of the war, the means to temporarily defeat Sin, thus giving Yunalesca the power to create the final Aeon. Due to its overwhelming power of creation, Yevon was not able to control Sin, and it went on a rampage. In fact, its first act upon its creation was the complete destruction of the original Zanarkand. It then proceeded to attack the other Machina cities, essentially turning Spira into what has become today. Eventually, the inhabitants of Spira gave up on rebuilding Machina cities due to Sin constantly reappearing and destroying them. Seeing the terror of Sin shortly after its creation, Yunalesca sought to defeat it using the power given to her by her father. Using her husband Zeon to create her final Aeon from within Zanarkand, they defeated Sin in combat. The consequent absorption of Zeon by Yevon itself allowed Sin to be reborn sometime after, and Yunalesca died in the process. Considering she was the only person in Spira with the knowledge of defeating Sin, albeit temporarily, she decided to remain in Spira as an unsent. The birth of Sin and its destruction on Zanarkand was witnessed by Bevel's soldiers who were marching to Zanarkand and fled back to Bevel, recalling tales of a monstrous creature believed to be born due to the wrath of Yevon himself. Eventually, this belief led to the creation of Yevon, named after the leader of Zanarkand himself, as they had deified Sin and Yevon and used it to maintain a grip of control over its people. To further alienate the Bedour, they were blamed by Yevon for the cause of the Machina War because of their creation of Machina, and condemned them throughout the years after. This was a belief that was heavily enforced by the general population in part due to Sin's attacks targeting Machina-developed cities. Up until the start of Final Fantasy X, the religion of Yevon endured as Sin also remained in Spira within the same time, likely no different from what it was 1,000 years ago, although it is unsure to what extent or even if its appearance has changed due to the course being changed depending on the nature of the final Aeon that has defeated it throughout the years. Apart from the evidence of the ruins in Spira, Sin is the only other consequence of the Machina that still persists in Spira by the events of Final Fantasy X. And that ends the tragic tale of the Machina War. This war served as a massive catalyst of Spira's less metropolitan layout and more of a natural one. Regardless, despite the fact that I would have wanted to see what a Spira ran by Machina cities would have looked like, I still appreciate the natural look that the current Spira holds, with landmarks of Machina ruins showing as the remains of a more technologically advanced Spira. Let me know what you all think. Can you picture what the Spira of old would have looked like before the Machina War? If Square Enix continues the story past Sin, do you want a minigame where one can excavate sites all over Spira to discover its past, including details from the Machina War? Let me know in the comment section below. Also leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you wish to see more content. And be sure to subscribe to my second gaming/personal channel for behind the scenes content, and follow me on Twitch as I will be booting up the live streams, and thank you all for your continued support for the channel. It means a lot. Other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and that, as they say, is that.